During the original Nintendo Switch era, whenever a massive, heavy-hitting RPG got announced for the system, we all kinda did the exact same nervous winced face. We'd ask ourselves, okay, it looks amazing in the trailer, but how many pixels is this thing going to drop when I play it handheld? Is my console gonna sound like a literal jet engine taking off? But with the Switch 2 fully out in the wild, the entire conversation has completely shifted. Developers aren't just squeezing down their games to fit on a tiny cartridge anymore, they are actively flexing what this new hardware can actually do. Today we are looking at the absolute cream of the crop. We're breaking down 10 RPGs on the Switch 2 that are pushing the visual and mechanical boundaries so hard, they honestly look like they should be running on a high-end PC setup. When Square Enix announced they were turning Final Fantasy VII into a trilogy, we all had the same thought. How are they going to stretch a 1997 PlayStation game across 3 full releases without it feeling like total filler? Well, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth didn't just answer that question, it completely blew the doors off it. If Remake was a tightly controlled linear tour through the gritty slums of Midgar, Rebirth is the exact moment the training wheels come off and you're handed the keys to the entire kingdom. The scale here is frankly ridiculous. You're stepping out into a massive, vibrant world map that completely captures that old school sense of adventure, but updated with modern sensibilities. But what makes Rebirth genuinely brilliant isn't just the sheer size of the zones, it's how much love is packed into every square inch. Square Enix went absolutely feral with the minigames. You got Chocobo Racing, space shooters, piano simulators, and Queen's Blood, which, let's be honest, is an aggressively addictive card game that will easily steal 10 hours of your life before you even remember there's a world to save, and then there's the combat. It refines the hybrid real-time ATP system from the first game, but introduces synergy abilities. These are dual character team-up moves that don't just look spectacular, they actually reward you for changing up your party composition and learning how characters like Tifa, Yuffie, or Red 13 play off each other. Yes, the narrative still pulls some classic Nomura multiverse shenanigans that will leave your brain thoroughly melted by the time the credits roll. And sure, some of the open world map cleaning tasks can feel a bit Ubisoft heavy if you try to do absolutely everything. But as a complete package, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a masterclass in how to honor the past while forcefully dragging it into the future. It's a massive, generous, deeply emotional RPG that reminds us exactly why we fell in love with this universe in the first place. If you've ever looked at Musou games, you know, the Dynasty Warriors formula, and thought, yeah, throwing hundreds of brain-dead enemies at me is fun, but it's a little repetitive. Let me introduce you to One Piece Pirate Warriors 4, because despite coming out a while ago, this game has had an absolute glow-up with recent current-gen upgrades and a staggering amount of DLC that makes it the definitive anime power fantasy. Look, we know the baseline Musou gameplay. You press 2 buttons, you capture outposts, and you watch a KO counter tick into the thousands. But Pirate Warriors 4 does something incredibly smart. It treats the absurd, logic-defying power scaling of the One Piece manga with total respect. The big game changer here is the emphasis on aerial combat and distinct character archetypes. Characters don't just feel like reskins. Playing as a sky type like Sanji means you're literally putting together infinite air combos without ever touching the ground. Playing as a giant type like Kaido or Big Mom makes you feel like an actual walking natural disaster, flattening entire armies under your heel. And if you haven't played it recently, the developers have kept pouring fuel on this fire. We've gotten everything from Gear 5 Luffy turning the entire battlefield into a literal cartoon, to recent character packs adding heavy hitters like King, Yamato, and Film Red Shanks. They even dropped a free next-gen patch that bumps up the resolution, smooths out the frame rate, and drastically increases the number of enemies on screen. It turns the chaotic skirmishes into beautiful, absolute frame rate friendly madness. It's loud, it's dumb, it's completely unpretentious fun. And it is easily one of the best anime adaptations ever made.
Whatever you do, it is imperative that you do not hunt the shadows that have
Let's talk about Persona 3 Reload. Now, if you entered the franchise with Persona 5, you might not realize just how much the entire series owes to the original 2006 Persona 3. It was the game that invented the modern Persona identity, the daily high school simulator mixed with dark supernatural dungeon crawling. But going back to play the original or its various ports, yeah, it could feel incredibly dated. That's where Reload steps in. This isn't just a basic remaster, it's a ground-up, Unreal Engine remake that beautifully borrows the flashy, high-fashion DNA of Persona 5 and injects it directly into a much darker, more melancholy story. The visual overhaul here is just spectacular. Every menu screen is an absolute work of art, bathed in deep blues and fluid animations that make even buying medicine at the pharmacy feel incredibly cool. But Atlus didn't just pretty up the place, they fundamentally fixed the gameplay. Tartarus, the massive towering dungeon you explore at night, used to be an absolute mind-numbing grind. In Reload, they've added new environmental mechanics, breakable objects, and a shift mechanic during battle that mirrors Persona 5's Baton Pass. It keeps combat fast, tactical, and deeply satisfying. Plus, they added new daytime activities, roof gardening, and fully voiced dorm hangouts that flesh out the SEE's team in ways the original game never could. At its core, Persona 3 has always been a game about mortality, grief, and making the most of the time you're given. Reload protects that beautiful, tragic story perfectly while stripping away 20 years of mechanical frustration. It's stylish, it's deeply moving, and it proves that a great story well told never really goes out of style. Now, before we get back to the rest of today's video, I've got a massive announcement to share with you all. You come to Switch Planet because you love the Switch ecosystem, and with the Switch 2 out in the wild and a massive library of next-gen titles constantly dropping, our focus here is dialed heavily into covering everything Nintendo that is not going anywhere. But as passionate as we are about Nintendo, I know a huge chunk of our community, myself included, plays on other platforms too. So, I built a new home for them. I've officially launched a brand new channel called GameRan. GameRan is going to be our ultimate hyper-focused hub for upcoming games across all platforms. But launching a brand new channel from absolute zero is a brutal climb, and honestly, I need your help. My immediate goal is to get GameRan past that first major milestone of 1,000 subscribers so the algorithm can start doing its thing. If you appreciate the work we do here on Switch Planet and you want a dedicated spot to track the rest of your gaming ecosystem, please hit the link in the description or the pinned comment. Head over to GameRan and smash that subscribe button. It takes 5 seconds, it's completely free, and it helps me out immensely as we launch this new project. Alright, on to the next game. Alright, so when Square Enix dropped Octopath Traveler 0, a lot of us JRPG fans collectively held our breath. Why? Because underneath that stunning trademark HD 2D coat of paint, this is actually a massive console adaptation of the mobile prequel Champions of the Continent. And look, historically, mobile to consoles translations can be a complete minefield of bad pacing and stripped down mechanics. But somehow, Square Enix and the team at Doki Doki Grooveworks actually pulled it off by completely overhauling the experience. Instead of just forcing you into a set of static protagonists, Octopath 0 completely flips the script by letting you build your own custom traveler right out of the gate. You're picking your appearance, your voice, and even your favorite food, which instantly grounds you in the world. From there, the gameplay pivots hard into a town-building mechanic. You are literally rebuilding your destroyed hometown, using classic path actions to recruit over 30 distinct allies to come live in your settlement and fight by your side. And let's talk about the combat, because it goes absolutely feral. Instead of the traditional 4-person party, Octopath 0 bumps it up to a massive 8-character battle system. You've got a front row and a back row, and managing the constant swapping to break enemy shields and exploit weaknesses feels like playing a high-stakes, turn-based game of chess. Add in a brand new skill inheritance system, and the tactical depth here is staggering. Now, is it perfect? Not quite. Some players have pointed out that the pacing can feel a bit sluggish early on, and because of its mobile roots, the overall progression can occasionally feel like a grind. But if you want a massive, beautifully scored, mechanically rich RPG that bridges the gap between old-school Suikoden army building and modern turn-based combat, Octopath Traveler, Suro proves that a mobile pedigree doesn't have to hold a great console game back.
Wakey, wakey, young man. You can't stay in bed all morning.
If you know anything about the original Dragon Quest VII, you know it is an absolute behemoth of a video game. Back on the original PlayStation, it famously took like 4 solid hours of puzzle solving before you even fought your very first blue slime. It was a massive, incredibly long, and at times, deeply exhausting masterpiece. So when Square Enix handed the keys to Hexadrive to create Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, the mandate was clear: fix the pacing, but don't lose the soul. And man, the visual direction they chose here is just delightful. Instead of going for the standard anime-heavy cell shading, they built a gorgeous physical puppet and diorama aesthetic. You can literally see the woven fabric on the characters' clothes and the clay-like textures of the environment. It feels like stepping into a living, breathing toy box. But the real magic is in the gameplay quality of life upgrades. The developers aggressively streamlined the narrative, trimming down redundant dungeons to get you to the meat of the time-traveling story much faster. They also added a brilliant feature where you can preemptively strike weaker monsters directly on the world map to defeat them instantly, completely eliminating low-level grinding. Combat gets a massive shot in the arm too, thanks to the new moonlighting mechanic, which lets your characters equip and level up 2 vocations simultaneously. Combining magic and physical perks on the fly makes team building incredibly fun. Purists might argue that the game gives out a few too many free healing items and safety nets, making it a bit too easy compared to the grueling original, but as a way to experience one of the greatest, most tragic vignette-style stories in JRPG history without having to commit a literal 100 hours of your life to it, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined hits an absolute sweet spot.
I see.
Let's be honest for a second. Capcom's Monster Hunter franchise had a bit of a rocky ride with some vocal sections of the fanbase recently. But while everyone was arguing over mainline changes, Capcom quietly dropped Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection using the RE engine, and it is a total, absolute banger that reminds everyone why this universe is so special. If you haven't played the story spin-offs, think of it as Monster Hunter meets Pokémon, but with way more active tactical depth. You're a rider hatching monsties, bonding with them, and fighting alongside them in a beautifully polished, turn-based combat system, but Twisted Reflection takes a much darker narrative-driven turn than its predecessors. You're caught in the middle of a brutal political conflict between 2 warring kingdoms, all while a mysterious crystal encroachment disaster is actively tearing the ecosystem apart. The headline feature here is the story's focus on a Rathalos, a species that is supposedly completely extinct in this timeline. Unraveling that mystery while navigating the fractured relationship between your home kingdom and a rival princess makes this easily the most compelling narrative Capcom has written in years. Mechanically, the rock-paper-scissors combat mechanic is back, but it's much tighter, offering way more control over your monsty's specific skill targets. Exploration also feels incredible. The RE engine handles the massive open zones beautifully, making riding your favorite monsters across vast deserts and up rocky cliffs feel smooth and completely seamless. It completely strikes that rare balance of being incredibly accessible for newcomers while offering enough deep elemental build crafting to keep hardcore monster hunting veterans hooked for days. If you need a palate cleanser that delivers pure, unadulterated JRPG joy, Stories 3 is a must-play. There is one thing we absolutely know about Bethesda. It's that they will never ever let a milestone anniversary pass without re-releasing one of their absolute monoliths. So nobody was shocked when Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition rolled out to mark 10 years of exploring the Commonwealth. But while a lot of people cynically expected a lazy cash grab, Bethesda actually did something kind of interesting here by taking the Skyrim Anniversary approach and leaning heavily into curated community content. At its core, this is still the exact same Fallout 4 you either poured 300 hours into or walked away from back in 2015. You're still looking for your son, still building slightly clunky settlements, and still letting Dogmeat carry 50 pounds of literal desk fans. But the big selling point is the inclusion of over 150 pieces of Creation Club content bundled right into the package. We are talking massive weapon packs like the Tesla Cannon and Heavy Incinerator, the classic Enclave Remnants questline, and a whole bunch of cosmetic stuff, including different dog breeds like Huskies and Dalmatians, if you want to swap out the classic German Shepherd. Plus, the current gen console performance is incredibly smooth now, running at a rock-solid 60 frames per second with significantly faster loading times. The downside, if you are a hardcore PC player who already runs a heavily modded setup, This edition doesn't offer a whole lot of new value, and yes, the initial update inevitably gave the PC modding scene a brief collective headache. But if you're a console player looking to dive back into a massive content-complete post-apocalyptic sandbox, this is officially the definitive way to play it. It's comforting, it's chaotic, and it proves that even 10 years later, wandering the irradiated wasteland never really gets old.
Even without having to battle, you can catch a wild Pokemon.
When the Pokemon Company first announced they were making Pokémon Legends ZA, everyone immediately assumed we were getting another wide-open, wilderness-heavy game like Legends Arceus. But Game Freak completely subverted expectations by revealing that this entire adventure takes place exclusively inside a single massive urban environment, Lumiose City from the Kalos region. And man, narrowing that scope completely changed the entire vibe of the series for the better. The whole premise revolves around an urban redevelopment plan coexisting peacefully between humans and Pokemon. But what makes ZA genuinely spectacular is the introduction of the ZA Royale tournament, which completely throws out the traditional static turn-based combat formula. Instead, battles now happen in actual real time. You are actively positioning your Pokemon on the fly, timing your dodges, and managing your cooldowns directly on the city streets. And yes, Mega Evolution is back in a massive way, completely integrated into these real-time skirmishes. Watching a Mega Charizard or a Mega Mewtwo unleash absolute havoc in a crowded urban square looks incredible and feels genuinely powerful. Now, if you were hoping for vast, sweeping open fields and hunting Pokemon in the absolute wild, the single city setting might feel a little claustrophobic at first. But the sheer verticality, the dense neighborhood side quests, and the incredibly fast-paced tactical combat engine make this easily the most ambitious and experimental Pokemon game Game Freak has put out in years. It's stylish, it's incredibly fast, and it breathes some seriously needed fresh air into the franchise. If you want to talk about an absolute sleeper hit that completely blindsided JRPG fans, we have to talk about Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven. Square Enix has spent years trying to figure out how to make their notoriously cryptic, incredibly experimental Saga series appeal to a wider audience without alienating their core fans. And with this ground-up 3D remake, developer Scene genuinely cracked the code. The setup here is brilliantly unique. You aren't playing as a single chosen hero on a linear quest, instead, you are the Emperor of Varennes, ruling an empire across literally thousands of years. Whenever your character dies or a major time skip happens, you choose a new successor from a massive pool of different classes, passing down your stats and abilities through a generational inheritance system. Your goal? Defeat the 7 heroes, ancient protectors of humanity who have returned as corrupted, vengeful tyrants. What makes Revenge of the Seven so special is its completely non-linear freedom. Once the tutorial ends, the game essentially stops holding your hand. You decide which regions of the world to annex, which storylines to pursue, and how to build out your empire's infrastructure. The combat retains that classic SaGa thrill where characters randomly spark new abilities mid-battle, but it adds a beautifully clear turn order timeline that makes it feel much more tactical, like Final Fantasy X? Yes, it can still be incredibly tough, and the story focuses more on grand history vignettes rather than deep individual companion character arcs. But if you're tired of modern JRPGs that feel like they're on rails, Romancing Saga 2 offers a staggering amount of agency, brilliant mechanical depth, and a generational gameplay that is almost impossible to put down. Out of the entire Like a Dragon saga, the original 2009 Yakuza 3 has always been the black sheep. It gave us the beautiful, wholesome dad Kiryu era at the Morning Glory orphanage, but it was also infamous for brutal pacing issues in combat where enemies blocked literally everything. So, when Ryuga Gotoku Studio announced they were giving it a ground-up Dragon Engine remake with Yakuza Kiwami 3, fans were thrilled. But RGG didn't stop there. They packaged it as a 2-in-1 experience alongside a brand new standalone companion game called Dark Ties, and the contrast between these two is absolutely wild. Let's start with Kiwami 3. The shift to modern hardware breathes incredible life into the neon streets of Kamurocho and the breezy, humid docks of downtown Ryukyu. The legendary blocking problem thankfully fixed. Combat is snappy, giving you access to the refined Dragon of Dojima Kiwami style, alongside an entirely new weapon-heavy Ryukyu style, inspired by traditional Okinawan martial arts. RGG even doubled down on the slice-of-life elements, heavily expanding the Life at Morning Glory orphanage minigames and introducing a chaotic local gang storyline called Bad Boy Dragon. But while Kiwami 3 is all about Kiryu trying to protect his peace, Dark Ties takes you directly into the absolute gutter of the Yakuza underworld. This is a dedicated 4 to 6 hour prequel campaign starring the tragic antagonist of Yakuza 3, Yoshitaka. Playing as Yoshitaka feels drastically different. He's cold, he's ruthless, and his combat style is an incredibly brutal, high-impact take on shootboxing that makes you feel the weight of every broken rib. The story follows his meteoric rise through the Tojo clan, alongside the hopelessly goofy Tsuyoshi Kanda, and watching Mine navigate this deeply corrupt world gives a massive amount of nuance to his character before the events of the main game. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out one of the videos on screen right now. As always, I'm Cyril, big thanks to the community, and I'll see you on the next video.